Let's bring in for discussion national trial attorney Michael Jaafar, who's with us. Michael, what a trial this has been. Over 40 days inside of this courtroom for these jurors, 10 men, 2 women, deciding the fate of Monica Sementilli. What are your thoughts?
I was dreading that you would ask me that question, and I'll tell you why. This is the most difficult jury decision ever. I mean, I've had cases where I would be willing to bet my house on what the verdict would come back at. This one's a tough one, Julia. We put a lot on our juries. I would say that this is the most difficult case to put on a jury in my recent memory, and here's why. My gut tells me that she conspired with Robert Baker to kill her husband. My gut tells me that, right? And the reason my gut tells me that is because you have no business emailing the instructions for the security system at your house to the person who eventually killed your husband unless you're conspiring with him, right? All of her actions before his death, after his death, in the middle, when he was, in his wake, she invited Robert Baker to her house to meet Fabio's family, right? My gut tells me that she conspired with him. Her moves were nefarious. But at the end of the day, the Axeman took the stand with nothing to gain. And he gave a full-throated admission that he alone acted, and he acted with Austin, and Monica did nothing to do. She had nothing to do with it. And not only did he have nothing to gain, he had everything to lose. He's going to be treated like a complete rat in the California prison system, correctional facility system, because he potentially got in the way of the conviction that they wanted. And you saw that prosecutor. She was in the opening statements and she was in the closing statements. She hates Monica Sementilli. Monica Sementilli put them on a cat and mouse chase. They detest her. And so for that reason, this case is so wide open. So did Robert Baker create enough reasonable doubt with just one juror? We'll see so far. We'll see pretty soon.
Yeah, and that's a live picture in that courtroom there in LA County. So as I ask you this question, if we have to cut you off, if the judge takes the bench, just know that we are waiting for that verdict to be read. All right, so this case also, Michael Jaafar, had a lot to do, the evidence of Monica Sementilli after she was already in custody, showing her behaviors and her trying to contact her co-defendants and what she was whispering or telling them. But it really tried to point to the consciousness of guilt for her.
1000% agree with you. 1000%. And that's the thing is, if you had nothing to do with Robert Baker killing your husband and you found out that he killed your husband, because presumably you found out about it after the fact if you didn't conspire with him, right? Why would you send him love notes? Why would you send him messages? Why would you manipulate him while you're in jail and he's in jail? You should be outraged that you're in jail because of what he did. First, that he killed the father of your children. Secondly, he's landed you in jail under suspicion for conspiring with him, right? But no, what did Monica Sementilli do? She did the opposite. If I was in the jury room, I would say she had no choice but to double down on the hand she played. She had to manipulate. She couldn't just go outrageously against them, because if she conspired with them and she went against them, he'd turn against her and he'd point the finger and she'd be in jail. So she had no choice. This is kind of like the things that would go in the jury room, go around, and I'm really riveted to see what they decide. But yes, the consciousness of guilt, completely there. There's no question that it's there. We'll see, did she create enough reasonable doubt with one juror that perhaps she did not conspire with Robert Baker?
Oh, we will see what this verdict is. Monica Sementilli not inside of the courtroom 8 years after the death of Fabio Sementilli in 2017. Justice guilty as charged for his wife, who set the entire thing up.
That convicted killer now faces, she'll spend the rest of her life behind bars, because sentencing's at a later date, but that first-degree charge up to life, and then the conspiracy 25 to life. So let's bring in our guest to discuss this. National trial attorney Michael Jaafar, what is your reaction to this verdict there in the great state of California?
I was shocked, I was stunned, but not surprised the jury got it right. And what I was thinking was, Monica, the most unsettled defendant in the history of unsettled defendants, found a way to get herself convicted, even though the Axeman took the stand and testified. He wasn't wearing a jumpsuit when he testified, right? He was in plain clothes testifying, saying, I did this alone. She still found a way to get herself convicted. I mean, her movements were unsubtle. They were nefarious. And the fact that none of us are surprised, the jury got it right, by the way. The fact that none of us were surprised. If I was in law school and the professor said, here's an exam, the person who's charged with the crime, there's an axeman that everybody agrees committed the murder. Both sides agree committed the murder. This person is going to take the stand and say, and with nothing to gain and everything to lose, that he did it alone and she had nothing to do with it. Do you think she's going to get convicted? I would say, as a student, only if there is like some sort of an audio of her coordinating it. No, there's no audio. There's nothing. There's just circumstantial innuendo on her moves. I would say, I don't know, maybe weeks of testimony. We know the answer now. We needed weeks and weeks and weeks of testimony of everybody around this situation testifying to her moves, to her movements, to her, to her mannerisms, to what she did. Her closeness to Robert Baker, I understand, because she conspired with Robert Baker, she had to stay close to Robert Baker. She had to double down on her hand. But she played her hand the way she had to play it, but she was very unsubtle. It was the email of the instructions for the security system of the house, combined with her moves the day of, the day after, going to Vegas with Robert Baker, the life insurance proceeds. I think the combination of all these things did it. If you're a juror on this in this case, this is going to live with you for the rest of your life because of Monica's reaction after she heard the sentence. I'm not surprised. The jury got it right. But at the end of the day, she was the most unsubtle defendant in the history of unsubtle defendants. Her moves did her in.
Yeah, I want to make sure our viewers know, Michael, this is not a replay that we're showing right now. This is live in court. So this verdict has come down, and she is still, talk about the lack of subtlety from Monica Sementilli, her emotions throughout this trial. During the testimony of witnesses on the stand, I mean, it was really compelling, a bit captivating just to see what she did during all of it. And now this reaction at the end, I'm wondering what she's thinking, maybe about the two daughters that she shared with Fabio Sementilli that she hoped would believe in her innocence.
What she's thinking right now, the storm of emotions going through a defendant's mind, because I've sat next to defendants when they were convicted, the storm of emotions comes down to what their life is going to look like going forward, and here's why. The day that the verdict is read, there's a psychological thing that happens with defendants where they ask themselves, what's behind door 2? If I get convicted, what does the rest of my life look like? If I'm acquitted, I get to walk out and see sunshine. She's in California. She has a life. If she were acquitted today, she could walk out after 8 years of being in jail, and her life would be completely different than what it ended up being, going through those doors. People don't know what it smells like in that jail, Julia. We're initiated. We've been in that. We've represented clients. We know, but it's musky. It stinks. It's gross. You have no power. You have no freedom. That's what was going through her mind. Obviously, her daughters as well. But at the end of the day, the storm of emotions, I think this is unrivaled by anything in human history in terms of what you feel like at this moment. I think some people have told me I would rather be executed. Can they execute? That's why you're on suicide watch when you get convicted, because you want to kill yourself. You want to end why would people want to kill themselves when they get convicted? It's because it's a terrible, terrible journey.
Well, it seems like it's finally taken its toll on her, and she may be showing, I don't know if they're real emotions or not, this convicted killer, but we will find out a little bit more about the scheduling. The judges on the bench. Let's head back in.
So we rewound that a bit so that you could hear what was going on before Monica Sementilli was handcuffed. So now playing that out again, that confused look on the face of this defendant who is convicted of murder, conspiracy to commit murder of her husband, Fabio Sementilli. That scheduling for the sentencing, in case you couldn't hear it, June 23rd is when they will return to determine her sentence. Life without parole is the max that she can get for that first-degree murder charge. Michael Jaafar still with us. Second-degree murder was on the table. They could have come back with the lesser, which would have given her 15 years to life. But, her team did not focus on the lesser. They really went with she is completely innocent. Do you think that was a misstep on their part?
I mean, obviously, yes, in hindsight, they should have done things differently. In hindsight, she should have done things differently. She should have taken this. She should have testified. Things should have happened differently, obviously. But at the end of the day, I think what her team decided was, look, we have the axe man. These are lawyers, right? So they went to the same law schools that all of us went to. And I can't imagine myself being given this fact pattern and being told the axe man with nothing to gain is going to testify. and saying he did it alone, right? But he had an affair with your client, the defendant. I just can't imagine I would not be able to flip one juror. So I think what her defense team did was make the calculation that all we have to do is flip one juror. If we focus on the second-degree defense, second-degree murder, if we focus on any of that, you still get to conspiracy to commit murder. You still get to that, right? And she's not a younger lady, right? She's still going to go to jail, presumably for the rest of her life, if we make a mistake. So what we have to do is we have to take this stance of righteous indignation. And he had a press conference before the trial, right, telling people the truthful testimony of Robert Baker will show you why my client didn't do anything. I think they focused on it. I think they had to focus on it. I think they had the instruction by their client to focus on it. And I'm stunned. I'm not shocked by the verdict. I expected this to happen after the weeks and weeks of testimony by all of his friends and family, his son, his sister, his employees, chief of staff. But at the end of the day, I think the defense made the decision to focus on Robert Baker and go out there and really hammer the state. And they did not know at the beginning of this trial that the state would spend weeks, and they had a witness list, but they did not know how many of those witnesses would testify. They did not know that they would be suffering. I called this case, the prosecution case, the boa constrictor of prosecutions. It was a boa constrictor midway through the trial. When I thought I was midway through watching this trial, it was 3 weeks in, and I wasn't midway through. I thought it was midway through. I said, the boa constrictor is choking me. Right? It's getting tighter and tighter, and my head's going to pop off. And it just kept getting tighter and tighter until the boa constrictor just did her in. So I think the defense just wasn't ready for that. They just had Robert Baker, but that clearly was not enough to sway the jury.
Mm-hmm.
All right, absolutely. Michael Jaafar, thank you so much. So that was both the cross and then the redirect. Still with us, national trial attorney Michael Jaafar. So, you know, convicted killer Lori Daybell, she just can't help herself when she asks questions, and even if she makes a point, she also follows it up with a comment or a sigh or some sort of reaction.
This is why they tell you, even if you're an attorney, you don't defend yourself, right? They say that an attorney who defends himself has a fool for a client, right? And that's attorneys. That's people who've actually been in a courtroom, who actually know what they're doing, right? That's why you talk to attorneys. Hey, I have an attorney. Well, you're an attorney. Well, you can't represent yourself. But here's a person who is completely out of her depth, completely unprepared for this, and not exactly the most sane person in the world, and a person who was convicted for murdering her children and the ex-wife for her, the former wife of her current husband, right? And she's trying to do it. Obviously, she's not going to be dealing with a full deck. You can see in the way she's conducting it herself that the judge is giving her a lot of leeway in this case. The judge is very annoyed and very irritated. If you ask any judge, what's the biggest irritant to the court system, and they'll tell you a pro se person, whether it's a criminal case or otherwise. So, yeah, she's absolutely not doing a good job. She's doing a terrible job. I think we all know she's probably going to get convicted, innocent until proven guilty, but she's not exactly acquitting herself properly.
Oh, yeah. Not at all at this rate, but we're continuing to watch. Again, court is dark there in that courtroom in Phoenix, Arizona, and they will start up again next week. Michael Jaafar, thanks so much for your analysis. Big hearing is underway for Eric and Lyle Menendez. A judge is going to decide if the new district attorney, Nathan Hochman, can block a resentencing hearing that we've been hearing a lot about.
Yeah, the brothers were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for killing their parents in Beverly Hills back in 1989. A judge will now decide if the new LA County District Attorney, Nathan Hochman, can withdraw the initial recommendation by his predecessor that the brothers should actually be resentenced.
Now, currently, that resentencing hearing is scheduled for April 17th and 18th. So that could mean that the brothers are, if it depends on what the judge decides, but it could mean that they could be set free under an updated California law. Now, no cameras have been allowed inside of the courtroom for the pendency of this case, and that's the same for this hearing. So we'll keep you posted both on air and online on what the latest is there.
Well, much to discuss with this case. So let's bring in national trial attorney Michael Jaafar standing by. So what's your spidey senses tell you on this one? The new DA, Hochman, is trying to argue against the other DA, Gascon, in the recommendation here.
I read the law on this. It seems pretty clear to me that he's not able to do it. He's not allowed to do it. It's not at his discretion. It's up to the court. And there's precedent. And this is a California specific thing, right? So my reading of the law and my understanding of it, he can't do it. He's got to do it. Remember, these DAs are political figures, right? So it's in the Old West, you know, when there was a town and the townsfolk became unruly, they would say, well, there's a new sheriff in town, right? That's where it came from. And that's kind of what it is in California. This Nathan Hochman is the new sheriff in town, coming in to do law and order and to overcome the Gascon era. And people have certain feelings about the Gascon era, which is why they voted in Nathan Hochman. And so he's got to do what he's doing. I look at it as more of a political thing. It might work, right? But it's not going to work. Legally speaking, he's not on good ground. He's on terrible ground. But he's got to do it. He can't just sit back and just let the process go. He doesn't want the Menendezes to get resentenced. He wants the sentence for the Menendez to be undisturbed. And so what do you do if you're a political figure and you're in this situation? Well, you fight and you object. If you lose, you can say, well, it wasn't me, it was a court. But before he did this, a lot of people would have thought it was up to him. So if he didn't do this, then people could rightfully say, well, you clearly agreed with Gascon because you didn't fight it. So my spidey sense, Matt, is that I think that the judge is going to deny his motion to withdraw it, and then we would possibly be looking at the Menendez brothers being resentenced.
And that will be huge news, depending on what happens in that hearing. We'll, of course, be keeping you updated here on Court TV. You mentioned really the drama that's surrounding this decision, Michael. We've even got members of Nathan Hochman's district attorney's office, his ADAs, assistant district attorneys, suing him over, they say, being demoted because they supported the Menendez brothers being resentenced. Is this something that's just going to continue to be a slow burn in this office and grabbing headlines, especially if the brothers are not resentenced?
Now, I'm glad you asked that. That is something he can do. He does have the power to demote anybody that he wants, because that's what, you know, when he came in, he's going to clean up house, and he perceived them as being people that were part of the Gascon era. I actually don't blame him for that. Whether I agree with him or not, that's his decision. That's his prerogative. He did the right thing.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Michael Jaafar, thank you so much for your analysis.